The Watchers is Ishana Night Shyamalan's debut film, and following in the footsteps of her father, she brings a horror thriller that tries to set its tone in the unknown. Coming in, I had no clue what to expect, but twists, turns, and everything in between. But what we got, I didn't expect at all. There are some great highs, but also some very low lows. The Watchers might not be the best movie of the year, but it's definitely one worth a discussion. Before we get into it, over 98% of you guys who watch these videos aren't subscribed, so if you do enjoy this video, feel free to hit that button so you don't miss out on any more of my reviews. But without wasting any more time, let's get into it. I want to start off by talking about the composition of this film, because that is probably my favorite part of it. I think the composition is great. Very high f-stop to make the background absolutely blurry. It is kind of a cinematic cheat code, I guess, but I think the composition in general was really, really cool. It wasn't necessarily super symmetrical, but it helped me really get into the environment, because a lot of other elements really didn't. Feels like there was always something in the foreground or always something interesting going on in the background. And I think that is what really led me to at least be engaged through the runtime of this film. Sadly though, there isn't a lot of texture on the screen in the non-forest moments, which even makes my slightly good thing about this movie a little bit of a diss on it, because at times when it wasn't necessarily in the forest and there wasn't a lot going on, it kind of felt like a straight to streaming movie. There was no directorial flair, and I totally get it. This is a debut. I think for a debut, the amount of balls that it takes to have such a weirdly conceptual film like this one, that takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of story things to talk about, which I'll get into in just a second here, but I think what drags this movie down the most and kind of takes away every other element is the very, very mediocre lead performance. At first, I was like, okay, maybe it's just the dialogue itself is bad. Maybe it's just that there is no directorial flair, and I feel like this movie is just empty going into it. But I found after watching the movie that the lead just wasn't doing her job properly. The line delivery is not good in this movie at all whatsoever from the lead actress. I think it's the actress, not the director, because also when we're introduced to the other characters, they instantly outperform her. It feels like everyone is on a different level than this lead actress. Maybe if she was one of the side characters and not the lead, I wouldn't have a problem with her acting, but she delivers so much of the dialogue, and I will get into the dialogue in just a second because I definitely think that's also a low point of the film, but I feel like a great lead actress would be able to at least deliver slightly corny lines in a more convincing way. I haven't seen this actress in anything else, so I don't want to instantly diss her career as a whole. This might even be her debut performance, who knows? But she doesn't really do the job that's necessary for a film that relies heavily on her emotions. And before getting into the dialogue itself, I want to talk about how this film doesn't have enough thrills for me, because I get scared very easily, and I felt maybe 0.5% tension throughout the entirety of the runtime. Setting aside the overall story for now, I think the lead is so mediocre that I just didn't care for her personal stakes. And with that, a lot of the lore isn't really explained until the latter half of this film. So I didn't have a care for this world, these characters, this story, this lore for most of the runtime. And it's based on real Irish lore, so there is a lot of digging deep to do here. But this story wasn't given a catalyst till way too late, so at that point I didn't really care for it. I feel like if we had gotten something more interesting in regards to this Irish lore that inherently is really, really cool, by the end of the film I'm like, wow, the fact that they took this idea and made this movie out of it, that's really interesting, but it doesn't do much when you don't have that for most of the film. How uninteresting a lot of the movie is can be summed up with my theater experience, because two guys walked out of the movie like 5 minutes in, and then the same guys came back in like 15 minutes in, so they missed a lot of the setup, and then one of the guys just fell asleep, full on snoring for like the first half of the film. This movie takes so long to get going, and I think what makes it even more unbearable in the first half is a lot of the setup dialogue is ass. It's just so direct. It's so kind of annoying, honestly. It's not even that it's cliche, but the conversations just feel very first-time director, first-time writer. Some of the lines that they say are, "You don't want to know the real me. What are you running from? What is this place? And by the way, she says all three of these lines to a parrot. The first handful of minutes in this film are just cringe, to be honest, and it doesn't really work in any way for me. And so I had a bad taste in my mouth going into the really cool aspects of it. And even then I was like, why are we doing this? Like, we have, like, at the end I was like, there's way cooler stuff we could have been doing. And as for the overall story, I think once the characters and the general idea of the Watchers are introduced, shit does get interesting. Like, there is something really, really cool and honestly flaring about this film, and the creature design is really cool. The conceptually, like, the idea of all of this Irish lore is also really, really cool. Once you get past that initial wow factor of, I've never seen something like this. Okay, this general idea is really, really cool. Okay, how are they going to deal with this general idea that I find really, really cool? There's nothing to chew on. After that initial wow factor, you don't get much. It's part survival, part lore-based, part thriller, part horror, but it never feels thrilling at all. It's never scary, and I, for one, get scared very, very easily. And to make matters worse, while watching this movie, it felt like an unbearably slow film that you just have to wait to the twist so that it becomes an amazing movie. And then, like 5 minutes before the twist, my podcast host that was sitting right next to me, Brantley, leaned over and whispered, "Oh my God, I bet you XYZ." And literally he called the entire twist. If you want to hear more of our thoughts on this movie and many, many more, you can check out our podcast. It'll be linked in the description. That's not a good sign for how unbearably slow this movie was. But the saving grace and why I wanted to make this video was because I think the final 10-ish minutes of this movie is actually really, really great. It fully capitalizes on the emotional buildup of this movie, but it is just way too late to save the entire film. At the end of the day, this does feel like a straight to streaming movie to me. I think a lot of the ideas conceptually are really, really cool. There's a lot of cool creature designs, and on the surface, a lot of this movie is very, very interesting. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is also very, very lackluster, and that has a lot to do with the very mediocre lead actress in this film. I think for a directorial debut, this is a pretty damn good movie. I feel like a lot of other elements just should have been elevated. Overall, I'm going to give The Watchers a 5.5 out of 10. I think if you enjoy M. Night Shyamalan's films, this is one that you should definitely check out because conceptually it follows those footsteps, but it definitely doesn't leave you like an M. Night Shyamalan movie leaves you. But I'm very excited to see what Ishana does in the future of her career. There's obviously a bright path ahead, and this is definitely a pretty good start. And again, if you did enjoy this video and you haven't already subscribed, please do so you don't miss out on other movie reviews and rankings. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.